Hello and welcome to another edition of the CBB Super Show. I am, of course, your host, Walt Waddell, aka Dub Deuces 85, the niche sports connoisseur. We are on the FTN network, ftnfantasy.com, the place with all the tools, all the green screen opportunities, window trips, and dreams. What is that? Caviar wishes, caviar, Robin Leach. If you know, you know. Love it that you guys are here hanging out with me. It is Friday night, just past 10 o'clock on the West Coast. Just finished the first game of the new college football expanded playoff. Notre Dame advancing over Indiana. Good on them. It was a solid day overall. Very solid day in both college basketball and college football. We have a huge day tomorrow, 3-game college football set there with 3 remaining games of the first round of the CFB playoff. We have an 11-game main slate over on DraftKings for the college basketball day, and then also an 8-game night slate. So plenty of opportunities here. There will be obviously DFS content galore. We're also going to have mega betting opportunities, prize picks, underdog, fliff, you name it. We got it. Also, we'll have projections out in the morning, bright and early. My bowl preview series has been moving right along nicely. The bowl preview, playoff preview for tomorrow is already out on site. Free if you're not a sub yet. Free. That's right. Free content. Come here. Free content. It's going to be a great day. I cannot wait. We're going to crush it. We're going to absolutely crush it. You know, the R2 for the, the fancy projectionist computer smart folks out there, the R2 on the projections is getting mighty good. 0.92 today. 0.92. If you don't know what that means, don't worry about it. It took me a while to figure it out. I'm still not sure that I do. Anyways, we're going to get into this. Before we do, please, you guys have done such a fantastic job. I hate to keep asking. I hate to beg for likes. It makes me feel weird, but not too weird that I won't do it. Please make sure you hammer that like button if you're on YouTube. It helps us so much. All of those interactions, if you're watching on X/Twitter, repost, retweet, comments, questions, concerns, anything at all interaction-wise that you feel like you can provide, it is very, very helpful. I appreciate it so much, so very much. I'm in a great mood. Great mood tonight. Feeling good. Today was awesome. Today was absolutely awesome. My man Alex, always here late night on the East Coast. My North Kakalaki brother from another, always can count on you. Says, just in case yours is watching tonight, look at the gorgeous W hoodie and remember the pain. Yeah, that's right. That is right. Have that bad memory in there. I don't think that the Clemson boys are going to have as much success as we did, but yeah, that's another great memory. Another great memory. Clemson should come out and pour purple and gold and run Michael Penix out there, right? Like that would be the ultimate, just to torture them, just to absolutely torture them. Speaking of which, we're supposed to see Michael Penix soon, right? Like soon, isn't he going to be coming out here soon? Kirk Cousins' mistake is we're supposed to see. I don't follow the NFL much lately, but Michael Penix season is upon us, so I'm excited for that for sure. All right, With all that out of the way, if you're new to the show, you're probably wondering what the hell is this. It gets better, I promise. That's my amateur hour comedic stuff. I try to lighten the mood before we start hammering you with stats, efficiency stuff, projections, all of that and more. Let's get into it. Here's what you paid for, so let's get down to business. First game on the slate, Maryland versus Syracuse. And then we had some really fun mid-major slates all week. Finals week is now over for the most part, so kids can stop pretending that they care about their academic studies. I kid, and get down to business. But we have now like high-powered P4, formerly P5, high major slates on board here. Maryland 12.5-point favorites over Syracuse, total of 155. The Maryland Terrapins have been spectacular. Really strong start to the season for them. Their schedule might not have been the best. They're 9-2 currently. Losses to Purdue and Marquette, better. And then wins over Villanova, Ohio State, but really just beating the pants off of the teams in front of them. The first version of the net really likes Cincinnati because they had a poor schedule strength-wise, but they've been beating the hell out of everyone. So it's actually smart when you play in a hard conference to kind of do that, as long as you can actually beat the Bucknells and Alcorn States by a lot and not actually, I don't know, lose to them like your Doug Gottlieb at Green Bay. Anyways, this should be a really good game. Ken Palm has it 84-73. I like Maryland to cover. It's a bit of a high spread there. Syracuse is a team with issues, for lack of a better term. JJ Starling is questionable officially. He's dealing with the hand issue. He has not played since, the end of November. I don't know that we'll see him yet. It sounds like it'll be a little bit. With that allows us to have a bit of value here. Let me plug this. It's cold out here. I got the little heater on, but it's burning my legs. They just lost to mighty Georgetown under Ed Cooley, 75-71. The starting lineup we have been seeing, at least without Starling: Jaquan Carlos, Eddie Lampkin, Elijah Moore, Chris Bell, and Donnie Freeman. It's basically a 7-8 man rotation in typical Syracuse fashion. Newer coach, same short rotation. Jair Davis and Lucas Taylor as the primary bench pieces. Freeman's a little bit too expensive at $7K. I think this is a game where he's going to have to be going up against some real tough front court options in Julian Reese and Derek Queen. I don't like that for him. I think he was going to struggle mightily. Foul trouble hasn't been a thing for Freeman much this year, but it is going to be in this game. I feel pretty confident in that. Eddie Lampkin's a pretty intriguing price at 5.5, but foul trouble for him as well. This is Maryland team. I'm really liking what I'm seeing out of them. We do get a bit of value with the youngster Elijah Moore, who played 36 minutes against Georgetown. He has been playing a lot without Starling. He had that massive game against Tennessee where he scored 24 points, knocked down 3 threes. He's failed to live up to the Cornell and Tennessee game where he scored over 30 in back-to-back. Had some shooting lows, 4 of 14. The volumes there, sub 5K, definitely valuable. Not a priority by any means, but definitely somebody we can look at. Jaquan Carlos's price has finally come up above 5K, so we don't necessarily have to keep looking at him at 3.7, 3.8 and begrudgingly playing him. He has scored 24-plus DK points in 3 straight games, makes him viable still even at the 5.4 price, but it is not a must play. Thankfully, they've priced him up more. On the Maryland side, definitely have to decide if you want to play Derek Queen in this situation. I think it's fine. Games where they're just blowing the doors off of teams. He's playing reduced minutes and still putting up huge totals. He dropped a 50 on Purdue in that loss. Basically stayed out of foul trouble till the end. 26 points, 12 rebounds, 2 blocks. We've been seeing some 2-foul participation from Maryland as well, so that helps Queen. We don't see it as much with Julian Reese because we know he can't really conduct himself with foul trouble. Derek Queen has shown he has an ability to do so. Only priced at 9.1, which is the highest priced of the year for him, but he has been so very good that you can definitely feel good about it. I think he's probably going to end up being a 10K player sooner rather than later. And this is going to be considered an underprice for him, kind of like Cooper Flagg. Anytime he's 9K or below, you just got to roster him. And that's probably the case with Queen. Fantastic rates, 26.6% usage rate, 25.1% shot rate, a combined rebounding rate of 33%, block rate of 5%, and he's drawing almost 6 fouls per 40, only getting called for 2.7. So he's been pretty damn good there for the most part. And this game is taking place not in the Syracuse home floor, but at the Barclays Center, the $1 billion arena that it is. So it's counting as a technical neutral. I don't know how many Syracuse fans are even out there these days, but this is the Gotham Classic. And I think Maryland fans will travel fairly well. We'll see. So I don't consider this a home court advantage for Syracuse by any means. Last game before next Saturday, they play Maryland Eastern Shore, and then they start off the rest of, they've already played a couple of conference games, but the rest of the conference season fully January 2nd, which is a Thursday, against your Washington Huskies on the road at Seattle. I'm going to have to be there. I'm going to have to show up, root for my man, Derek Queen. Want them to lose, but we'll see how that goes. Julian Reese priced at 8-1. That's kind of cheap for him on the most part. He was almost 9K earlier this year. Definitely more worried about him getting into foul trouble, but they have been the just absolute, terrorizing opposing front courts. They are so good together. Immaculate way that the staff has built this roster. Say what you will about Kevin Willard. He has really done a nice job putting the pieces together, getting Selton Miguel, Rodney Rice, Jacoby Gillespie, all of these other transfer pieces around Queen and Reese has really done wonders. Gillespie priced there at 7.6. He hasn't really been worthy of paying up almost 8K. He's had some nice games. The early December game against OSU, 23 points, 4 assists, one of his better games in a Maryland uniform. Not quite consistent enough for me to love that price, but it is a definite good matchup for him. Rodney Rice is there at 5.4. We're seeing increased minutes for him as they move through the season. He's healthy now, everything good to go. Definitely like him at the 5.4 price. He is usurped and taking minutes away from Deshaun Harris-Smith, who played just 21 against OSU, just 18 against Purdue, and then 4 in their last game, which was not an injury. That's just seemingly his minutes have been evaporating. He is a prime candidate at the end of this year to transfer down. I think he's a player with a lot of upside, a lot of talent, but it's clear that he's going to be behind some of these other guys, upper tier veterans on the team now at his position. He just has not developed the way that they want. No disrespect to him. He's 4K, but just can't use him right now. Selton Miguel is there at 4.6. Another player who's seen his minutes start to go up as well. 20-plus fantasy points in 4 of his last 5. Definitely usable at the 4.6 price. A mini Maryland stack, perhaps. People are going to be afraid to stack on an 11-game slate, but it's still viable for sure. And then the kind of last play to look at there, maybe a little Tafara Gapare action, still playing around 20 minutes. He's been very, very active. Fantasy point per minute guy. 4 of his last 5 games, over 18 fantasy points. 3 of those 5 over 20. And that's even with Jordan Geronimo back in that last game, who has basically been out, for a big chunk of the season. Played just the 1 minute against Purdue, and then he played 15 in the blowout. And he actually was very solid, 7 points, 5 rebounds, a block, and 2 steals. I think they'll start to ramp up his minutes as they go, but they have an embarrassment of riches in the front court right now. Moving on to the next game here, Princeton versus Rutgers. Rutgers 6-point favorite, total of 152. Whenever Rutgers are on the slate, there are 2 main names to know: Dylan Harper or Ace Bailey, the freshman sensations. Harper has been all the talk coming into the season was Ace Bailey this, Ace Bailey that. And he's certainly been good, but for DFS purposes, Dylan Harper has just been an absolute, the epitome of consistency. A little bit of a down game against Seton Hall, which everybody does, slow-paced games against them, but he still put up a 30. Like that, 10K, 3X, not the best, but still, if a bust is going to be 30, we can work with that at 9.8K against Princeton. Definitely a upset potential here. Princeton, they're just that thorn in the side team that has a way of frustrating teams like Rutgers, so we'll see how it works out. Expect Harper to play majority of the game, 36 plus minutes. I'm going to try and go fast here with all these games, by the way. Certainly a viable pay up. Ace Bailey, that guard forward eligibility, any player with that on DK is automatically uber attractive to me. He's playing heavy minutes. If he can stay out of that early foul trouble that sometimes bestows upon him, 36 to 38 minutes is an inevitability. His price creeping up there. I know it was almost 9K here in that last one, but still 8.4. It's a little high. Projections weirdly don't necessarily love him. I don't know. Let me look here. It's a couple of times here where he's been under projected with where I feel like he should be. Had a couple of down games early. So yeah, he's like 3.8, 3.8x with like 36 minutes. So not horrible. You could probably use him if you want to, but he's not going to be the most highest projected play by any means. As far as any of the secondary plays there, I don't think there's really anyone that we need to waste time with. Jeremiah Williams is cheap at 5.1, playing 30 minutes, but third, fourth option. Jordan Durkak gets assists. Does a little bit of everything, but he's priced at 5.3, not 4.3. He gets under 5K. We can start talking about it. I think Lathon Somerville is going to be a really interesting option next year as a 2-3 year player. He's the other freshman on this team, priced at 4.3. Tyson DeCuff. There's a Jamichael Davis. There's just all these relevant options from past years, past teams. But there's just really two guys that matter right now for Rutgers, and it is the freshman one and done in Harper and Bailey. On the Princeton side, you do have some talent here, and Rutgers has been a little susceptible, more fantasy friendly than I kind of thought they would be, honestly. They play at a fast pace, 70th in tempo, and there's been some pretty strong performances both for them and against them. I do like Princeton here. Ken Palm's projection on this is 79.75, so a solid chance for Princeton to be in this game. I do think I want to bet them, especially at that +6 number. I think that this is like a 2 or 3 point game, honestly. The starting lineup that you can expect for Princeton, if you're not up on your Ivy League stuff right now: Xavier Lee, star; Caden Pierce, monster; Dalen Davis, Philip Burial, and Malik Abdullahi. Off the bench, you're looking at Blake Peters, Jacob Huggins, and Peyton Seals. About a 7-8 man rotation, just the way that we like it. Xavier Lee and Caden Pierce, the top two. They're priced accordingly. As you can see, Xavier Lee, top 50 usage rate in the country right now at 30.3%, shot rate of 28.1%. And he's shooting about 39% from long range. But wait, there's more. He's top 15 in the assist rate category, 38.5%. As far as Caden Pierce goes, the usage and shot rate's not to the level of what Xavier Lee's is, but he has a very strong 19 to 20% defensive rebounding rate. He does shoot 38% from long range on volume, 24 attempts. He doesn't get himself into foul trouble, and he does a little bit of this and that to be fantasy relevant. As you can see, 8K. It's a bit of a higher price than I'd want to pay on him, but he's definitely got a high floor. Would rather play Lee if I'm playing anyone from Princeton at 7.7. It's going to be a nice battle between him and Harper. There is a GPP mini stack out here that plays Harper and Lee together. Both of them could put up 40 plus. We've seen Lee just do some monster damage, but it's been against some teams that have a very lack of defensive intensity or discipline. Monmouth, he puts up a 50, 58 against St. Joe's, who can't guard anyone, 49 against Texas State, who can't guard anyone. I mean, he's putting up some really big numbers, but when you look at the teams that Princeton has played, really not anyone. They beat up on Duquesne, who I thought was going to be much better this year. They did beat St. Joe's in that game. Portland. Nobody of note here. Rutgers definitely the best team that they've played. Their non-con not very good. 8-4 should be better than that. They did play Loyola Chicago, a better than I care to admit Loyola Chicago team, and did lose that one 73-68. But Xavier Lee did have 17, 6, and 5 in that one. He's just a really strong play. 9K or higher is really what he should be. So we do have a little bit of room there upside wise with this price. As far as anyone else, this is another team that's kind of a two-man show. Dalen Davis is kind of interesting at 5.9, but he's not doing enough upside wise to really warrant that price. Blake Peters is somebody at 4.5 we've seen in the past put up some decent fantasy games throughout the course of his Princeton career. Tournament a couple of seasons ago, he was a pretty relevant piece to that, and he was a starter all of last year as well. He started a handful of games here, but they've been bringing him off the bench, and he is playing roughly 28 to 30 minutes off the bench. Looking at what he's been doing, 19, 24, 25, and 21 over his last four at 4.5K. He's definitely relevant. Would like him to be at a different position. He is a guard, but it's a little bit harder this year. We liking forwards more than guards, but this is like one of those plays that you wish you had at the forward slot there so you could maintain your guard spots for some premium plays. I definitely want to pay up at guard at the early going here. But Blake Peters is very much in play here at 4.5K as a value option instead of paying up for Lee. Rates are down a little bit, 17.9% shot rate from last year. He is shooting 41% from long range, though, solid enough, and has a 10% defensive rebounding rate, which maintains with his career average. Mainly going to be a scorer, but he does a little bit of this and also a little bit of that. All right, SMU versus BC. Moving on to this one. SMU games have been extremely fantasy friendly. Boston College, they've been heinous, absolutely heinous. I'm not sure what to think about Boston College this year, but it's that, last year they were pretty fun for DFS at a time with Claudell Harris. They lose him. And honestly, they're just not a very fun team to watch. SMU is an 8-point favorite here, total of 147. SMU has been extremely fun for DFS purposes under Andy Enfield. They're 9-2, losses to Butler and Mississippi State, but coming off a win against LSU, Virginia, and Washington State. All solid wins here. On the road against BC, Ken Palm has this one 79-71. Would not probably take the -8 here just because it's on the road, but definitely like them to win. Money line wise, maybe we can find some other place to mix that up, do a little bit of a parlay, but I do like SMU here, obviously, as most people would. SMU, fantasy relevance everywhere. Early in the season, at the beginning, it was all about Boopy, Miller, Kevin there. He was putting up some big numbers. Anytime he's priced below 8K, it was just an auto play. But now that SMU is at full strength, and that's an important note to make, they were understaffed a little bit. They had some guys out, Matt Cross coming back, getting you to glue. There was a lot of pieces missing there in the early going. Now that they're at full strength, Miller has taken a more facilitators type approach, which is good for the team, obviously, but it's hurting his fantasy upside to a degree. So that 7K price is going to look mighty good to most people, but it's not a lock by any means. Matt Cross, we had a very low ownership against LSU at 6'3". He had a phenomenal game, 16 points, 16 rebounds. He had been trending upward. Now he's priced at 7'3". A big decision to make. I think he has to continue to be in the player pool, but obviously the price of 7'3", it's tough. He did play 35 minutes against LSU. If BC can keep this somewhat close, I do think he sails over 30 minutes again. He played 37 against Washington State. He's just such a fantastic rebounder. 4 straight games he has been in double-digit rebounds, and he does enough in the assists, blocks, and steals category. He's not as big of a scorer. That 16 against LSU was a surprise. Only had him for like 10. So anything above 10 is going to be a bonus there with his peripheral stats. But the 7'3" price, admittedly, is a little bit high there. It'll keep his ownership down, most definitely. You also have a price increase on Samit Yedoglu, who has been like 3K, 3.8, 4K for the longest time at 6'5". He continues to churn out mid-20s fantasy points. He's definitely still in play here in this matchup against BC. 20.7% usage rate, a 29% combined rebounding rate, draws 5.5 fouls per 40, block rate just a tick under 6%, 7'2", freshman, 270, just continues to develop. I am worried about fouls on the road here or a bad whistle. The price is up high enough. I think people, again, will continue to kind of fire him and Boopy out there, but I'm definitely going to be underweight compared to what I think the field will be, and I'm still kind of leaning towards Matt Cross there. I really like Matt Cross. His usage and shot rate are low, but he just does so much good things for DFS purposes. You want to write off BJ Edwards, and every time you do, he pops off like he did against LSU. 12 points, 8 rebounds, 6 assists, 3 steals. Edwards, man, like you'd think with the fact that they're so healthy now, he'd be the first one on the chopping block. In the first 3 games of the season, 35, 36, and 40 fantasy points. Awful against Butler, awful against Mississippi State. And it was like, okay, they're getting their guys back. He's going to take a back seat. And then had a pretty nice 17-4 with 3 steal performance right after that. The Wazoo game, 13-5-3, which was strong for him. Virginia, kind of rough, and then he just blows up against LSU. He's a little too expensive at 6'4" for these up and down performances, but if you're an MME guy or gal, we're not sexist here, you want to have BJ Edwards in your pool, because if you don't, he throws up these 35, 40 because he has 7 steals, you're going to be really feeling the pinch and wondering why you didn't at least get some exposure. Top 20 steal rate in the country right now. He's shooting 36% from long range. Has a 22% assist rate. He clearly should be playing, 30 plus minutes. They're just extremely crowded at his position. Chuck Harris, Cario Oquendo still exist, but he is a more complete player than either of those guys. Speaking of Oquendo, he's there at 5'6". He had a big game against Virginia, 21 real points. He has to score. There's just too many people on this team for him to have those consistent high-scoring games. We've known Oquendo throughout this course of his career, Oregon, Georgia, everywhere in between. 5'6" is fine for him, but he can get rug pulled at any time. Same with Chuck Harris. If he's hitting and the shots are falling, he could push towards 30 minutes. If he's not, we're looking at 18 to 20. It's just not enough. His peripherals aren't there consistently, so too crowded at his position once again. And then you can end things at 4.1K with Johan Trehor, who has maintained, for the longest time his starting spot. But the minutes just continued to evaporate. Now, Trehor didn't get much as a 5-star at Auburn. Transfers to the Big West. Shout out to the Big West. UC Santa Barbara, where he's an absolute stud. Transfers back up to SMU, where it made sense. He's definitely early on in the season was an unstoppable force. Had a couple of double-double against Florida A&M, knocked around Greensboro, teams that you'd expect him to beat. And he still produced at a very high level, but the minutes continued to dwindle. 20, 14, and 16 over his last 3. Price is right at 4-1, and he doesn't technically need more than 20 minutes with his rates to pay that off, but he's definitely a low floor guy at this stage right now. Talent is immense. 4-1 is an underprice for talent alone, but I just don't know if he's going to get enough minutes here with a full, healthy roster. On the BC side, Donald Hand is your most viable DFS option, but he's 6.9K. SMU has given up some pretty big scores to their opponents, so I think there's some merit to using him, and I think some people will. But looking at the way that things are shaking out build-wise, that doesn't feel like a priority play to me, and I don't know that we need to really force our way there. Last man in, sure, but he's not a priority like I think some are going to make it. Chad Venning at 6'2", he is the primary resistance to the SMU front court. I think that means foul trouble galore for him. He's had some nice performances, but not really much of a fantasy asset. And then you can go down to Elijah Strong at 5'1", who has shown some upside, especially recently. He had 30 against Dartmouth, 27 against Wake Forest. Another guy that can get a little handsy. It'll be interesting to see how he handles the size of this SMU front court, but he's definitely in play as a value with 25 to 26 minutes expected. And then one other value of note, Josh Beadle, priced there at 3.8. He can sometimes get into the mid-20s. You're typically going to be looking at an 18, 20-minute guy. Salary savings are there. He's taken a fair number of shots as well. He is one of those values that if you really like the pay-ups, you plug in and say, okay, can you get 10? I really just need 10. Don't bagel and don't get like a 5. Give me 10 and my pay-ups will do the rest. Beadle does have a 21.2% shot rate, which is pretty solid for a player at 3.8K, 22% usage rate. He's shooting 40% from long range on 15 attempts. He has an assist rate of 20%. He does have a fouls drawn rate around 3, but his fouls called rate sits at about 4.2. The reason that is so high, I've had the displeasure, I guess, of watching 3 full BC games, watch a lot of ESPN Plus and stream a ton of games. As Mike Kutry would say, watch games, watch games, watch games. You learn so much. He has been a reacher. He's one of those 1990s, not even AAU ballers, but like Boys and Girls Club, right? Coming up in elementary school, trying to reach, not understanding why you get called for foul. So he still plays that way. But 3.8, he's definitely a value that you can look at. I'm not that scared about SMU, but they do force a shit ton of turnovers. And I think the BC team's going to have a lot of trouble taking care of the ball. All right, moving on, we have Duke versus Georgia Tech. We're going to maintain a level of efficiency here, okay, guys? Duke is a 15-point favorite, total of 144.5. And when it comes to Duke, you just got to ask, really, is it going to be a blowout? It's going to be somewhat close. I do like we got a little bit tighter price slate here. This is in our wheelhouse. We've got a 10.2K Cooper Flag. You know the motto here. If he's priced at 9K, you flow chart, guys. I got this for you. 1 second. Flow chart. Ready? Cooper Flag. Priced at 9K? If yes, proceed to roster at all costs. Proceed to roster in every contest. Proceed to roster in every lineup. Okay? Over 9K? Is it a blowout? If yes, you can fade. If no, you can play. I do think he's certainly in play at 10.2K. I would rather roster a bunch of 7 to 8K players on this slate. That's just my natural tendency anyways. I know we're going to see Cooper Flag rostership here. It's technically a road matchup, but it's against a pretty porous Georgia Tech team. They do have size in the front court. I think his rebounding numbers could take a hit here. He did score 24 against George Mason, who was competitive for a half before it got out of hand in the second. He played 35 minutes in that game and took 20 damn shots. I don't know that will be necessary here against Georgia Tech. And at 10-2, you have some room there. If he puts up a 40, you're not dead to rights. If he goes 50 or more, then it gets tougher. If he gets about 32, 35, you're feeling pretty good with the fade. So depends upon the pay up there. Really, obviously, the talent's there. Top 3 draft pick. All that stuff's obvious. But when you're talking about a 10-2 price versus a 9K price, it just makes it a little bit more difficult, especially on a slate like this where the first couple of games are priced pretty appropriately or tighter, if you will. Con Knippel's there at 6'6". His price is I want it lower. He's going through a bit of the freshman wall more than Cooper Flag is. We were all over Knippel early in the season, and he paid off well at 5.2 price. His minutes, they're not stagnant, but they're kind of plateaued a bit around 25 to 26. Duke has a deeper rotation, especially in games like this where they should power through. Instead of Knippel, I think we're looking to, possibly Tyrese Proctor at 5'8", who has clearly taken a step back this year. Zion James at 5'6", who's been playing a ton of minutes since he moved in the starting lineup. He actually projects the best of any Duke player on the first run of the projections. Do like him at 5'6". Am kind of considering playing him. I think he has an excellent chance to rack up some steals and assists in this game. If he can give us anything over 5 to 6 real points, he's looking at an easy 4.5x score. Then you have Kaman Malawak at 4'9", who has scored 20-plus fantasy points in back-to-back games, 24 minutes against George Mason, 22 against Incarnate Word. We'd seen his minutes dwindling, especially against teams like Auburn, where he played just 14, Arizona, where he played just 16. He's been kind of struggling there, and there's a lot of development still to go. I don't think he stays in college past this year, although it'd be great if he did. But he's going to be developing on the fly, and we saw much better performances from him. Incarnate Word as a scorer, but then against George Mason as more of a rim protector and just eating the glass the way he did. He only had 6 real points, but still hit 21.5 DK points. I do like him at 4'9". They're going to need him and his size, his physicality against that Georgia Tech front line. So I think we do see him play a sizable amount of minutes, maybe 22 to 25. Just depends on, if foul trouble hits him. It typically doesn't, but you know how these matchups can be on the road and refs trying to make it about them. We did see Malik Brown come back dealing with the toe issue that cost him the Incarnate Word game. Played 16 minutes against George Mason. Took just 1 shot. Still put up 13 fantasy points. He's a very solid look for this game. I would expect him to play 20, maybe even 25 minutes at 4-6. If you gun to my head said Malowak or Malik Brown, I would take the slight discount to Malik Brown because I do believe he'll play more minutes in this. He's also a Fowler, but we know how active he is from his Syracuse day. We know that upside he presents against Louisville, 29 fantasy points, which is 6 real, 3 steals, a block, and 11 rebounds. I'm looking for him to put up a massive rebounding number and get us a fair amount of stocks against this Georgia Tech team. Very good play at 4-6, and I almost wonder if people are going to overlook him because not typically going to see him in the starting lineup, and you're not usually going to see him play these huge amount of minutes, and people taking a quick gander, if you will, at the box scores are going to glance over him and think, maybe not so much on Malik Brown. He's, in a 4 or 5 man front court rotation. But looking at close competitive games against Auburn and Louisville, 25 and 29 minutes, he's been out there. They've used him heavily. 24 against Arizona, 18 against Kansas. He's playing significant minutes in spots against teams that have front court options. So do not be surprised if he plays that much. Mason Gillis there at 3-6. I don't even know why he went to Duke. To win a championship, okay. He should have went to like Ball State or something and just averaged 50. That would have been nice for him to end his career on, but he's the ultimate team guy. I have nothing bad to say about him, but he's just not a fantasy option. But he's the type of guy you want on your team. And then you have Isaiah Evans, played 15 minutes against George Mason, 19 against Incarnate Word. He had that ridiculous, 6 for 8 3-point shooting game. Single-handedly was the reason that they were able to stave off Auburn there, at least in the first half, right? Solid. He's just out there chucking threes. He took 12 threes in his past 2 games alone, playing under 20 minutes in each. At 3.9K, I don't like to hang on a guy that is so tied to his 3-point making ability. But if you're having a hard time for value and you want Duke exposure, he has some guard forward eligibility as well. You could do worse. More of a GPP look. On the Georgia Tech side, there's one player in particular, and they usually every slate they project pretty well because they've got guys out, right? Kwesi Reeves, he's going to be out for at least another month. Lance Terry is doing his thing. He's all healthy. And then we saw Javian McCollum, who had missed a few games there, return against Northwestern back on the 15th and against UMBC. So he's back playing minutes. But there's one player in particular that I'm enamored with. It's freshman Jaden Mustaf, who put up a massive game, 15, 5, and 5 against UMBC for 31. Liked him before that game. That just kind of shows what kind of upside we're dealing with. And he is so good as a freshman that they just can't afford to not play him. 34 minutes against UMBC, 31 against North Carolina, and 30 against Oklahoma. So not just the UMBCs of the world. He's playing heavy minutes. And the last 2 that McCollum has been back, 27 and 34 minutes. So even with McCollum back, Mustaf is still getting his minutes. It's not coming at the behest of him. We've seen Luke O'Brien take a slight dip in playing time. Nathan George, a slight dip in playing time. And then we've seen Lance Terry kind of, go from 38 to 34. So everybody's getting taken from their pool to supplement McCollum, but Mustaf, the freshman, is not. He's still maintaining this 30-plus minutes. And he's not a super value anymore at 5'2" from when he was 4'7", 3-6, 3-2. We're not getting extreme value, but he is just so good. The Duke defense this year, in the past, we've been able to target against Duke with guys like that to pretty good success. Duke's defense this year is very, very good so far. I haven't particularly been looking to target against them very much, but I do like Mustaf. 23% shot rate, 23% usage rate, an assist rate of about 16%, draws 5 fouls per 40, 33% from long range. He's just improving game over game. And with Reeves still out, I think he's going to continue to get a ton of minutes. Big question here will be, can Bey Ndongo stay on the floor? He's a little bit spendy at 8K to speculate. UMBC, he absolutely terrorized them, 19, 9, and 4. You know what he can do. He can put up these slate-breaking games. He's done so in 2 of his last 3. North Carolina, the front court there, they lost that game, but 19 and 12. Everybody beats up on North Carolina's front court. We know that. But he struggled against Northwestern, foul trouble early, and he just didn't play that many minutes, 19. They just went away from him, and he just never got going. Against Oklahoma, foul trouble, only played 14 minutes. So I don't trust him against Duke by any means. I think He's an excellent GBP play if you're right, because he has that slate breaking upside, and I don't know that people are really going to be utilizing him, but you certainly couldn't use him in single entry in your main lineup. That would be a little bit too reckless even for me. Lance Terry, he's playing some big minutes at 6'8". He's probably the safest option on the team right now. Definitely like him. I think he's fine as a mid-range, balanced build type of guy. Nathan George at 8'2" is too expensive for me. He has put up 30-plus in 3 of his last 5, which includes games of 31 against North Carolina, but 42 against Central Arkansas and 37 against UMBC. Only 14 against Oklahoma and around 21 against Northwestern. Not sure we can pay 8.2 for him. McCollum's worth looking at 5.2. I do think they'll start ramping up his minutes. This would be a nice spot to kind of go to him. And then you've got values. Luke O'Brien. We did see Ryan Mutombo play pretty quality minutes against Northwestern. Now that he's healthy, good to go. Price there at 3.8, 22 minutes, 10-7. Bayandago just couldn't get anything going. They played Mutombo a lot. He played 13 against UMBC, had another pretty solid 18 there. So priced at 3.8, you can look to Mutombo. The guys in front of him likely headed for foul trouble, so I think he'll see a 15 to 18 minute floor, which at 3.8 is certainly viable. Duncan Powell, the other youngster, he's losing minutes with McCollum around, so you don't need to look at him. And then you have Luke O'Brien there at 4.4. All right, next game on the docket, UConn versus Butler. Man, UConn games are something. 9.5 point favorite, total of 143.5. We basically have to see, and this is one of the earlier games on the slate, so we'll know right away, Samson Johnson's status, dealing with the concussion, so he's in the protocol. He has been cleared to practice, but it seems like we're going to, know nothing about where we stand there until the morning. Priced at 5.4. We're not going to, or I'm not going to use him. You might. I'm not going to talk you off that. It's a solid price for him, but coming off of a concussion, I do have that kind of, it's not a hard rule, but a soft rule of not playing guys coming off of injuries, especially one like a concussion. Makes me a little uncomfortable. If he can't go, Terrace Reed, I know the price is high at 7.9, but the fantasy point per minutes number is ridiculous. His rates are ridiculous. You have to consider him. 35 minutes against Xavier. No Zach Fremantle due to his injury, and he ran wild. 4 blocks, 20 points, 13 rebounds. Reed has shown that he is perfect for this UConn system, and he has just been absolutely insane. The highest price he's been so far this season is $8K, so we're there. Had a couple of, fouling issue games against Texas, Gonzaga, brought him down. We had that 6.7 price against Xavier, which was a steal. If Johnson plays, I think we bounce off of him. If Johnson doesn't play, I think we just make that room and play him at 7.9. Butler has some size in the front court, certainly, but I just got to keep plugging him out there. 35-minute Terrace Reed with his fantasy point per minute number is just unfadable. Up to 9K. You don't even have to think about it. But once Samson Johnson's around, you really do. Hassan Diarra, underpriced last slate, and I don't know why, but under 30% on a mid-size slate. He had a monster game. It went to overtime, of course, but 12 points, 11 assists, 3 rounds of block. He didn't really do much in the overtime, all of that in regulation. Now his price jumps to 6.9. He still projects well. Like the Aiden Mahaney experiment just is not working, will not work. He was such a poor fit for this UConn team. I don't even know why they got him. At the time when he transferred there, you guys remember, I was like, not too sure about this. Started out playing, starter minutes and slowly but surely dwindling down. 3 minutes against Xavier in an overtime game, 8 against Gonzaga, 6 against Texas. He's 3.3K, but you can forget about him. Can't use him. All those minutes for Hassan Diarra, the rightful senior who came back, the mega super senior, getting starter level minutes. He is still in play at 6.9. It's a sticker shock of a price to pay for Hassan Diarra, but he's playing so well. Again, not a priority play, but is viable as a last guy in. And you can live in this 6 to 7K range and have a pretty damn high floor team. Let others swing and miss on these speculative, non-strong values and some of these pay-ups who are a little bit fragile due to either being on the road, foul trouble, etc. You can make a very good balanced lineup here. This is up our wheelhouse. This is like, for those of you who mess with me on college football, This is like, my balanced build or semi-balanced build in CBB is basically my 4 running back lineup in CFB, if that tells you anything. It's my Mona Lisa. Solo Ball was fantastic in the overtime game, 34 fantasy points. He hit 6 of 17, only 35%, but 17 shot attempts. He had kind of fallen off lately, and he had 4 steals. Didn't have much of a pulse, but he showed it against Xavier. I don't mind him at 6'3". It's a huge jump from the 5'1" price he was. We saw this early in the season with Ball when he was super chalky for like the first 3 weeks of the season. Now he's back to the price that he typically will be. I think, he'll teeter between 6'3", 7K. Definitely playable, more so than Diarra. I think I'd rather find the 600 because Diarra has more paths to success, but Ball's definitely in play. The freshman there, Liam McNeely at 7'6". I'm not too keen on him. He's been struggling with staying on the floor in the first half, especially. He's getting these fouls. Now that they've got most people healthy outside of Samson Johnson, they're not playing him through the foul trouble. He looked a little bit overmatched against Xavier. He had a quality game, 14 points, but there were times where he just looked like he was a bit confused. 7'6" is a pretty high price to me, almost 8K. I think I would rather look elsewhere, but you could do worse. And then you have Alex Caravan at 8'5", a premium price for him for sure. He's been blocking shots like just God level. I don't know what got into him. Rebounding well. He's not the typical alpha that you're accustomed to seeing. He is technically the alpha on this team, but he's much better as kind of like a high-level role player. He can step up when needed, but leaning on him, for a majority of the game just doesn't typically work for this team. You'll see his shot rate is about 21.6%. His usage rate is 20%. He has a ridiculous block rate of 6.5%, shooting 42% from long range. I just don't know that I can get super comfortable paying that 8.5 price for him. I don't know if this price is ever going to drop under 8K again, but you see he's had a lot more games under 30 than over, especially recently. The Texas game, 21-11 with 4 stocks. That was one of his best games of the season. He put up a huge number, 52 there. But you see, he's got to be racking up these almost unsustainable stock numbers to really pay off this 8.5 price. So saying that, I'm not scared of Butler by any means, but I'm not, foaming at the mouth, chomping at the bit to roster him at 8.5. I would almost just rather drop down to Terrace Reed and take my chances with foul trouble. On the Butler side, you have the value in Finley Bizjack. He's playing a ton of minutes. His fantasy point per minute number and overall usage, there's something to be desired there. 33 minutes against Marquette. He had a nice start to the game, but then he disappeared, only put up 9.5 fantasy points. Still, 4.2K, starting, playing 30 minutes. He's out there. There's just no upside with him. It's more about what he can get you in the rest of your lineup. Another of my famous taglines, not about what he's going to give you, more about what the player he allows you to roster is going to give you. You do have Andre Screen. That was a really tough slate on, was it 2 days ago? It was a shorter slate. Pricing was tough. We did have success. It was a good slate, don't get me wrong. But Andre Screen was like 35%, not even starting, coming off the bench, Fowler on the road against a Marquette defense. Like, he was expensive for that situation, but still his ownership was crazy high, and he had a good game, 18.5 fantasy points at 5K. Like, you'll take that on a tough slate, but only 15 minutes. Priced at 5.2. Almost wonder if he'll see that kind of ownership again. Probably not on an 11-game slate, but clearly he's somebody that's getting talked up to a degree and is in player pools. Up against UConn in their front court, I'll pass, but I do expect to run into single entry ownership on Andre Screen somewhere between 10 and 15%, and I just don't see it myself. Doesn't mean it won't work. The pay-up options on the team, Jamil Telfort at 7.5. He's been the all-everything for this team. The best rates, putting up huge games, 30-plus fantasy points in 3 of his last 5. He's going to have a huge game here for them to have a chance against UConn. Pierre Brooks there at 6.9. His floor is way too low, I think, to pay that price. We need him to come down to the low 6K range. but again, capable GPP look. Then you have Patrick McCaffrey, who's playing huge minutes out of necessity for Butler, just lack of other options. Doesn't have a very high floor either at 6'7" and matchup against UConn. Doesn't scream play me by any means. Colby King did see his minutes spike in the Marquette game, played about 27 at 5'9". Just a touch out of price there. Could probably get away with 5'4" or 5'5", but at 6K, just don't know that we can do that. And then you have the other value at 3-3, Landon Moore. Negative fantasy points in 15 minutes against Marquette. You know, superstars and scrub builds that some people love. Maybe you throw more in there. Hope he plays 20 minutes and get you 9. Definitely possible, but a very low-end option. He's no Tane Murray. I'll put it that way for those of you who heard me talking about Tane Murray and then bitching about not rostering him at the end. All right, let's move on to Marquette versus Xavier. Marquette 5.5-point favorites, total of 154.5. Xavier's, you know, without Zach Fremantle again, it's rough. It's rough out here for the Musketeers. Already out without Lassina Traore, who's going to be their starting center until at least, another 3 weeks. They had to go with a hodgepodge of options in the front court without him. Dallin Swain really struggled without Fremantle, and he has been kind of coming back down to earth. Swain had some big games early in the season, but his stocks numbers unsustainably high. He has really struggled as a scorer here as they've played upper tier teams like UConn, like Cincinnati, like TCU. He's just not a great a play at 6'3" as he was a month ago. Conwell's usage rates through the roof. He's going to be the go-to guy for this team without Fremantle. You saw that against UConn, 23 real points. I'm not like super excited about 7-4 for him, but recognize that his floor is high and he's going to take a ton of shots for this team. Devion McKnight is a little bit high for my blood at 6'7", but he's going to be on the court for just about every single minute. So it's right in the playable realm for him. We did see Marcus Foster play 31 minutes, so he's getting a ton as well there at 6K. But really what I want to talk about is Dante Maddox, who's there at 4'7". And I swear to you, I looked at him for a brief moment against UConn, said, could he get 20 minutes? It's so hard to predict. He played 35. He shot 14 times. He hit 5 of 9 from long range. 32 fantasy points at 4.6. His price only moves $100, so we can expect a big spike in ownership for him, but it's far from a guarantee. It would be hard to sit here and say he's going to play 35 minutes again, 20 for sure. Without Fremantle, they need offensive firepower. Maddox, clearly we've seen from, throughout the course of his career and the history of being an alpha in his previous stops when he was at Toledo, at Cal State Fullerton, around the way. Basically a much different situation for him now, not being the alpha, but they need his offense. So we can expect him to at least play, 20 to 25 minutes, which makes him very playable at 4.7K. The combination of Jerome Hunter, John Hughley is going to be taking over the Fremantle spot. Hunter did play 26 pretty solid minutes. He was really good in the first half against UConn, then did very little statistically speaking in the second half. But he was good defensively, so you can expect him to continue in that role for Fremantle at 4.6, playable. Hughley is he's killing. He is killing Xavier every time he's on the floor. They played him 19 out of necessity against UConn, but he's just been horrible. It feels like a long, distant memory. Almost doesn't feel real that he was putting up fantasy-relevant games at Pittsburgh a few years ago. So if you're considering him at 4.1, I would probably say not to do that. Your most viable pathway here is to use Maddox at 4.7. Yes, it's a chase, but not maybe a full chase because I do believe he plays 20 to 25 minutes. Or you can go Hunter. But the spot that I thought erroneously early in the season was going to be a great DVP spot, that being front court players against Marquette, hasn't really been that good overall. Marquette's defense on the front court has been pretty damn stout. Speaking of Marquette, you can't use any of their bench players. Man, I'm just I'm sick of it. Marquette has a lot of talent on their bench, but they just don't use it. And it's so tempting because you'll look and see some games like, man, Demarius Owens, that dude is legit. He's only a freshman. He's raw as hell, but damn, the upside is high. The future is bright for him. Then another game, you'll see Royce Parham. Like, this guy can shoot. Like, he should be playing a lot of minutes. Trey Norman, man, that's great defensive effort. Zadie Lowry, facilitator extraordinaire. Like, you'll see these moments that these guys have, and you'll almost talk yourself into playing them, especially on smaller slates, but you can't. You cannot use Marquette bench players. My old friend Scott Wilterdink, who used to call on the show all the time when we were on Blog Talk, he's a Marquette super fan. Twice this year, I've asked him, is this Demarius Owens night? And both times, and spaced within a month and a half's time, both times he said, hell no. He has told me to stay far away from bench pieces. If Chase Ross is out, he wasn't in that last game, then you can't really use any of those bench pieces. They're going to just lean heavily on Cam Jones, Chase Ross, David Joplin, Ben Gold, and Stevie Mitchell. Then you're going to see Zadie Lowry and Trey Norman pick up 10 to 15 minutes. And then Parham, Owens, and Hamilton, they'll hot hand their way to 10 to 12 minutes occasionally. But for the most part, they're just not going to play enough to do anything. All of those guys are going to be they're young freshmen and sophomore players. I think they're going to be great the next year or two, especially Demarius Owens. But as much as I want them to be fantasy relevant, because they're cheap as well, we can't use them. Ben Gold remains the chalkiest value play on this team. He's 5K. He's okay. There's no upside there with Ben Gold. He goes long stretches without doing much. He did have 18 at 4.8, which was certainly fine. But he's a very low-end value at best. Mitchell, 6'4", that's a low-end spot for him as well. He's had some pretty big games. He had 30 against Butler, respect. But more often than not, you're going to get low 20s for him. That's just too high for me. So it comes down to three options. Paying up for Cam Jones, who's almost 11K at this point, had a monster game against Butler. 23, 7, and 5, not just a scorer. Many people, what are they going to do without Tyler Kolek? Cam Jones, he's just a scorer. Well, no, he's not just a scorer. He's averaging almost 6.5 assists per game. He's averaging 5 rebounds per game. Cam Jones is the total package. As far as pay-ups go, especially on this slate, you can do just about, the best possible pay-up, of all. Definitely Cam Jones. And on most slates, I think we can say that. It's a really expensive price for a slate where maybe we don't have the, news pending any crazy news that we'll inevitably wake up to. The value to really make it happen, I don't hate the idea of forcing him in. I do think against Xavier, he has a chance to put up, a huge, huge, huge score. I think Xavier is going to be a bit of a punching bag in conference play here. We just saw the way that Hassan Diarra and Solo Ball undressed them, especially without Fremantle. You're able to drive a ton. In the Cincinnati game, we saw Seamish. He was doing a lot of driving on them. It's just really a defense that's going to cede a lot to perimeter options. Even in the TCU game, we saw Frankie Collins get after it, just repeatedly driving to the rack, either getting fouled or finishing, layup line type stuff. So Cam Jones, big time option here if you can afford him. Not telling you anything you don't know. Chase Ross at 7.2, it's expensive, but he's playing huge minutes and he's contributing in massive, just about every category imaginable. And you see against Dayton, 19 points. He's scoring this year. He's getting it done. He's operating as a second scorer. And then David Joplin at 7.1. Not as excited to pay that price for him, but he is a very strong GBP caliber play. Most of the time, people aren't rostering him because if you're playing a Marquette guy, you're just going to Cam Jones or you're going down to Ben Gold. As far as the large field stuff goes, and I know the contests aren't great, whatever. They never are. They will be once college football playoff is the focus of the day for everyone, right? For DFS and betting purposes. So we know on Saturdays until college football ends that the slates are going to be a little lackluster contest-wise, but we keep at it. anyways, in the jam and in those bigger contests, Joplin's going to see like sub 10% ownership, but he's very capable of breaking the slate. He hasn't done as much lately, but this is a matchup that I think he could do very well in. All right, moving on to the next game here, Mississippi State and Memphis. And this might be the game of the weekend. I was talking to my dear friend Varn, Jonathan Schiller of Roto Grinders fame. Talk to him daily, but yesterday we were having a chat about Draft Street. We were reminiscing about Friday night Horizon League, Ivy League games and rattling off names from 2013, 2014, Kay Fielder, Marcus Keene, those names, just stuff that our brains retain and not like honey-do lists, which is great. I'm sure our wives love that. But anyways, we're talking about that, and then we wrapped around to how good Mississippi State is and how sneaky of a team they are, and how this game against Memphis is just like a very good, litmus test for them. They are 10-1, a loss to Butler on the neutral court that they shouldn't have lost. Butler's stolen some wins from a couple of teams here, but very good win. They blew the doors off of Pittsburgh at home. They beat a very good SMU team away. Semi-neutral court win over a Utah team that's competitive. A very good McNeese team. Record-wise, they might not look it, but McNeese is going to be a tournament team. They beat them 66-63. Like, this is a very good Mississippi State team. Top 20 offensive efficiency. They don't turn the ball over. Top 50 defensive efficiency. There's a lot to like. This Mississippi State team is built to last. They are doing what they have to do in non-con, and if they end up being like a 7-11 team in conference, they could still theoretically make the tournament with the way that they've been winning. They'll need to do a little better than that, but this game against Memphis on the road, a win here would just about solidify their place as a team to watch in the SEC. And they start off, after this game, they've got Bethune-Cookman, and then they get into the heart of the SEC order: South Carolina, Vanderbilt, and Kentucky, then Auburn, Ole Miss, Tennessee. So it's just wham, 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 wham. The SEC, there's really no, gimme games in the SEC. Teams that used to be gimme teams, Missouri, Georgia, South Carolina, those teams are all difficult as shit, especially Georgia this year. And Missouri is no slouch either. Love this Mississippi State team. Let's see here. Trying to pull up of course, I don't have it in front of me when I need it. A lot of games. We kind of sleptwalk through the week with no games, and then wham, we have all these games here. Ken Palm has it 79-77 in favor of Memphis. I do like Mississippi State to win this game. I think they match up well against Memphis front court. Memphis has size, but they're also foul machines. And Mississippi State has just a plethora of front court options they can rely on. And perhaps the biggest surprise is how well the Miami transfer sophomore Michael Nwoko has been. 24% usage rate, 21% shot rate, combined rebounding rate, which is astronomically high, 41%, 6.5% block rate. He does have a high foul rate. He draws a ton of fouls as well. A guy like that, 6'10", younger, raw, still figuring things out. He's a bit risky here on the road against a front court like Memphis, but great fantasy point per minute numbers, great rates. If he can get to a 22 minute mark, he's going to blow the doors off this 5.3 price. He's probably too risky to use in your single entry stuff, but he's an excellent large field GBP play. He can put up 40 in this spot. Love Michael Nwoko. You have Cam Matthews, who's been fantastic. He's taken less of a scoring role. He kind of out of necessity had to in the past, but this year they don't need him to score. They need him to hit the glass, which he's done. They need him to facilitate, which he's done, and they need him to play high caliber defense, which he's done. You'll see he's putting up, 27 fantasy points per game while scoring less than 7 points, real points per game. That's fantastic. That is the epitome of safety. Combined rebounding rate of 33%. He has a sixth highest steal rate in the country at 6.1%, a block rate over 3%. Like Cam Matthews, if it is a game where he actually scores, he's liable to blow the whole doors off the entire slate. Yeah, like if you put up 14 to 16 like he did against Butler, he's sailing over 30 here. So like Cam Matthews as well. Sean Murphy's a little bit expensive these days. That might make you go, whoa, 7-3 for Murphy. If you haven't been paying attention for Mississippi State, guess I don't blame you, but you should be. His stocks numbers were incredible throughout the first month of the season. He's not much of a scorer either, although he is averaging 10 points per game. We've seen those numbers kind of drop. High caliber rebounder, high caliber rim protector. I admit he's too expensive here because fouls come into play, but he's also kind of capped here in the mid-20s at best. He typically doesn't start, comes off the bench and plays those minutes. But if Matthews or Nwoko or one of those guys gets into foul trouble, those extra minutes are solid. We're looking at some really strong GPP looks here in the front court for Mississippi State. On the guard side at 7.8K, nobody's talking about Mighty Mouse Josh Hubbard. Freshman year they did because he kind of just, lit the world on fire early in the DFS population. We're as enamored with this kid. Not as much chatter about him. Still an extremely high shot rate, 27.2%, playing 77% of the available minutes. He has a top 40 offensive rating, which the volume of shots he takes to have that offensive rating, that speaks volumes. True shooting percentage of 60%, effective field goal percentage, top 300. I mean, the volume he takes, he should not be that efficient, and he is. Assist rate of 20.5%. One of the lowest turnover rates in the country. I was just showing Brett, one of our community members, how insanely good Josh Hubbard has been. His assist to turnover rate is #1 in the country. He is just a fool. Just absolutely ridiculous. I'll post it after the show so you guys can see. But he has been ball dominant as ever and not turning the ball over, which is it. And to be 5'10", 5'11", and not turn the ball over with the ball in your hands, 90% of the time, it's nothing short of amazing. Will that continue into SEC play? We'll see. But he's been absolutely ridiculous. In the past and last year, we saw his price balloon up and get closer to 9K, rightfully so. This 7.8K price against Memphis, where I think he might take 20-plus shots and still get 5+ assists. Love Josh Hubbard. Absolutely love Josh Hubbard. Riley Kugel is no longer a value. Early in the season, I was making Kugel a thing, 4.6, 4.5. I was like, why aren't people using Riley? I know he's kind of played sporadically, but this is too cheap. 25 against SMU, 23 against Utah. Worked his way up. Now, he's playing a roughly 20 to 24 minutes per game as he should. The blowout win over Central Michigan cost him some minutes. He only played 16, and that was off the bench. They started R.J. Melendez in that one. But prior to that, in what were believed to be, prior to the game, competitive games, Butler, Pittsburgh, McNeese, 31 minutes, 28, 20, and 23, and he did start those 4 games. So it would not surprise me to see him back into the starting lineup. Central Michigan, obviously a subpar team when it comes to playing Mississippi State. I do like Riley Kugel. He's probably a little spendy here at 5'7", can't quite get to there, but as a starter, I definitely think he's viable. Claudell Harris is there at 5'1", 3 straight games over 24 fantasy points. It's another one that people may gloss over because there's so many options on this Mississippi State team. They're pretty deep, 9-10 deep. But Claudell Harris, as the kind of, bench piece that plays 30 minutes, is strong. He did start against Central Michigan over Riley Kugel, so we'll see if that continues. He's been a spot starter for most of the year. He started 4 of the games, but none of them consistent. Start 1, come off the bench 2, start 1, come off the bench 4. So it'll be interesting to see if he maintains his starting spot. 25.2% shot rate, 36% from long range. He was great at Boston College at times last year. He was putting up some really usable fantasy numbers throughout the ACC season. So I do like Claudell Harris a lot, and that price is definitely easy to get to at 5'1", especially if he starts. So we'll monitor that. But I'm very hopeful and very confident at the same time that this game has overtime potential, but will be extremely high scoring as well on both sides. Melendez at 4.3 as a starter. He plays about 20 to 25 minutes. He's mainly in there for his scoring, so I'm not as keen to play him, but I think he will see ownership. The price is low at 4-3. He has started the last 4 games after being a spot starter throughout the first month of the season. So if that continues at that price, needing value, I could see him start to balloon up somewhere close to 30-35% in single entry. If the shots aren't falling, it can get ugly there. This game against Memphis, athleticism-wise, might make RJ a little bit uncomfortable. So I wonder if he, cedes minutes there to Riley Kugel in that manner. But at that price, he doesn't need to do a whole hell of a lot to pay off, right? Memphis wise, all about PJ Haggerty continually. He's priced at $9K now, very, very expensive. I believe, quick check. Yes, that is, well, he was 8-9 at one point earlier this year. So the most expensive he's been. Plays every single minute. 2 foul participation here for Penny when it comes to PJ Haggerty. Extremely high. Played throughout the first half against Virginia with 2 fouls. And what do you know? He never picked up another one. Take note, every other coach in the country. So he's obviously in play. A luxury play to be certain against a tough Mississippi State team, but he's basically matchup proof at this point. Tyrese Hunter is somewhat interesting at 7-8. We know the upsides there. He put up 40 against Clemson, but just 20 against Virginia. Just no consistency. His first year at Iowa State, and just could tell like this dude's going to be rock solid. We're never going to have to worry about him bottoming out. Texas, it was hit or miss, and his price was always cheap, but you never really knew if he was going to show up that day. And the same thing has happened here at Memphis. You just never know truly if he's going to put it all together on a game-to-game basis. But instead of 5-4, 5-5, he's 7-8, 8K. Really can do some damage to your lineup. So a GPP look at best. The front court, Nick Jourdain, Mo Cisse, Dane Danger, they'll be in charge of trying to slow down that Mississippi State front court and keep those guards out of the lane. Danger has looked fantastic. 25 plus fantasy points in 3 straight, 12-11 against Virginia, 16-12 against Arkansas State. Only 3 rebounds against Clemson, but still put up a rock solid 25. He's a little expensive at 6'4", knowing that he's a fouler. But man, he has just really improved this year. The upside that we always imagined for him, he's been, easily the best front court player for Memphis the entire season thus far. Mo Cisse is a value at 4.9. He struggled more so than Danger with his fouls, though, but he can give you a 5x number at this price point if he doesn't foul out in under 20 minutes. It's a big if. Nick Jourdain at 5'7", plays big minutes. He is on a good day, 4th option on this team. On a bad day, the 6th option. But he's out there playing 30 to 35 minutes. Balanced type of build. You can use him. I do actually like him quite a bit here. Let's look at Memphis real quick. I would venture a guess. He projects all right. 3.5x. He's okay. But I do like him. I think he's under projected there. I think this could be a game where, he puts up a 24, 25 fantasy point score and plays quite well. 35 minutes against Mississippi State. I think this game ends up being a war, for lack of a better term. And then the last viable look is Colby Rogers there at 5'8". He takes a ton of shots. 1 for 11 against Virginia. 9 of 14 against Clemson, 4 of 14 against Arkansas State. So the volume is there. He's playing big minutes, mid-range-ish type of play. Don't mind it, but he's so reliant on his scoring ability. If shoots 1 for 11 again, you're in a pickle. He only put up 8 against Virginia because he just doesn't get the peripheral stats. All right, moving on, we have Florida Atlantic, the Mighty Owls playing Michigan State. Starting with Florida Atlantic, we haven't had them on a slate for a while, but the first month of the season, it seemed like they were on the slate every single day. They pretty much were. Quick reminder of what to expect from them. Starting lineup, typically Leland Walker, Baba Miller, the great Baba Miller, brand favorite, Ken Evans, Kiki Tandy, and Matas Vokielaitis. Off the bench, you're looking at Caleb Glenn, Trey Carroll, and Nicola Moretti. Not a ton of interest in this team. Baba Miller is nice at 6'5". He's had some pretty big games, especially lately, but you have to look at the competition they face: Florida Gulf Coast, Texas State, Jacksonville, and FIU. When they face tougher teams, those stats haven't been to that level. Oklahoma State, Drake, Liberty, all under 20 in those games. So before you go to slam in Bobo Miller, as much as I love him and he's been great, just think about the competition he's been playing. It will be much different going up against the Spartans front court that looked absolutely unstoppable last game. I do like Caleb Glenn, even though he comes off the bench at 5'8". He has really great rates so far this season. Almost playing starter minutes anyways off the bench, 22% shot rate, shooting 42% from long range, 7.5% offensive rebounding rate. He continues to develop. He's still only technically a sophomore, so there's a lot of room for development and growth there for Caleb Glenn, but he's had some pretty big games, I think, at 5'8". He's very playable, and you look there, 3 of his last 4, he's been over 26 fantasy points. The top projected player on the team at 5.5K is Leland Walker. He is steady Eddie, as they say, but he does have some built-in upside there as well. So again, a semi-value in the mid 5K range, very playable. Nicola Moretti at 4.6. If you can get upwards to like 26 to 27 minutes, I actually think he's probably one of the sneakier values on the slate. Not tied to his scoring as much as others, although it helps, but he gets other stats as well. And he's another player, younger, kind of developing on as they go, and he's becoming fairly reliable off the bench there for them. Trey Carroll has the best rates on the team at 5K, but minutes can tend to be sporadic. But you look at what he's done against FIU in 23 minutes, 9 of 14, 24 real points, on his way to 35 fantasy points. Jacksonville, 17-4-3 for 33. And then Texas State, 18-4-1 for 27. 17, 18, and 23 minutes. So you see the fantasy point per minute number is great. His shot rate is 30%. His usage rate is 28%. Kind of tough to really count on him. In a closer game like this, I feel like, or against upper tier competition, I should say, I feel like it's a bit of a sucker play. We're not getting him at 4K, 3.5, not even at 4.5. I would probably peg him around 15 minutes here. If somebody in front of him, like Caleb Glenn, who's been fouling, I should mention, maybe we see him, usurp 20 minutes. I do think that's enough to get him to value closer to that 20 fantasy point minute mark or 20 fantasy point mark. Certainly possible, but I think his logs are going to be a detriment to those that prioritize recent performance over some other stuff. Jackson Keeler, moving on to Spartans, was amazing. Oakland, they don't have much of a front court, so it was very obvious that the Michigan State front court was going to do well. All over Keeler in that one at 5'7", at 6'6", not as much. He has put up 33 plus fantasy points in 3 straight games, so he's on a roll here. 2 of those last 3 double-doubles, double-digit rebounds in 3 straight, playing extremely well. Love Jackson Keeler. Just not so sure I can feel great about the 6'6" price, but riding the wave a little bit for GPPs, could certainly see that. With the Spartans guards being healthy, it's hurt Trey Holloman. Holloman is fantastic. We saw when they were understaffed a bit, had some injuries, 35 minutes against North Carolina in that 94-91 win, 19.7 assists. That was his best game of his career, almost 40 fantasy points. But basically, you can take every guard on the team and forecast them for 20 to 25 minutes, and that's really just taking the piss out of all of them. Jeremy Fears, freshman, who I like a lot at 5'3" on a game-to-game basis. There's not going to be any upside there. Jace Richardson back and healthy. He's at 4'8". We've seen upside there, but really how much over 18 and 20 is he going to give us? Not far. They are taking minutes from Frankie Fiddler, which I think is the right thing to do. He's a stud at Omaha, but there's a big difference from Omaha to Michigan State. And it's just one of those up transfers that clearly hasn't worked yet, and they've reduced his minutes in kind. Xavier Booker is still a strong value at 4.4 after he put up 30 against Oakland. FAU has some size compared to Oakland, but I do think Booker can do some serious damage here. And Xavier Booker, people don't realize because of, the way he looks kind of reminds you of more of a traditional big man, almost 7 feet. Like he's going to live in the paint, but he's actually a pretty decent 30% 3-point shooter on volume, 34 attempts. And a lot of that's been recently. He's made 7 threes in his past 3 games, 3 of 5 against Oakland, 3 of 4 against Minnesota, 1 for 3 against Nebraska. When you have a guy near 7 foot like that, over 250, pulling his defender out and having to account for his 3-point shooting, that just is extremely hard. A lot of bigger guys like that can't handle that kind of offensive performance. They can't defend it, and it really opens up things for the front court as well in the painted area, because Booker is just a versatile player that doesn't look it, but man, he's certainly playing extremely well. So at 4-4, you can still go to him. It's not as a big of spot for us to go to like it was Oakland, but he's still very much in play. Cohen Carr, super athlete. He's fun. Dunk machine. He rebounds. I would rather play Booker. I would rather pay up for Keeler if you can afford it, but Cohen Carr is a GPP bank waiting to happen. He has flashed some major upside in the right spot. He just absolutely terrorized North Carolina, 14-7 on his way to 27, which is the best game of his career, but more of a secondary value of anything. Crazy, what's up, man? Who you take? Duke -15. I don't like to take big spreads too much. I'm like Mike Randall in that regard, whose betting show is tomorrow morning. Plug. But I mean, Georgia Tech is not great. So I would say that is probably the right side to bet. But I've been kind of staying away from like anyone that's 10 to 12 points or higher. So parity reigns supreme because you just never know sometimes. But yes, Georgia Tech is pretty weak. All right, Louisville versus FSU. Poor Louisville. They are just dealing with so many injuries. Quickly derailing their season. They're a team that came into the season and was like, damn, they've got so much depth now. They're going to be kind of difficult for DFS purposes, but now that depth that they had has betrayed them as they continue to lose players to season-ending injuries. They are 1-point favorites over Florida State, total of 153. Sean Pryor out for the year. Corin Johnson out for the year. Ali Khalifa was redshirting before the season. They're hoping to get Abubakar Traore back at some point here. It was supposed to be the beginning of January. Now it sounds like the end of January, but now who knows? With them being shorthanded, it's led to some pretty solid production here lately, and it doesn't really matter who they've played, whether that was Duke, Ole Miss, Oklahoma, Kentucky. Like, their guys are just playing every single minute. Chucky Hepburn's pretty damn expensive at 8'6", but he's out there for 39 to 40 minutes. Javon Hadley's really expensive to me at 6'8", but he's out there for 38 to 40 minutes. I still really like Terrence Edwards. I think we missed the boat on Edwards, though. You may recall 3 games ago against Duke, priced at 5'9". It was like, oh, they got all these injuries now. Terrence Edwards has not been really doing what we saw him do at James Madison. Like, this is a nice buy low spot for him. And sure enough, 21 real points, 29 fantasy points, and he's rattled off 3 straight of 26 plus now. But he's priced at 6'7" here against FSU. So we're no longer getting that discount. So I think, like I said, we probably missed the boat there. He's still playable at 6'7", but there's nowhere near as much value now. Like James Scott, if you can stay on the floor, not particularly feeling comfortable with him against this Florida State front court. Noah Waterman is cheap at 5'3", and we've seen some pretty big chalk on him throughout the last 3 weeks. He's had some real poor games. He did put up 12 and 12 against Kentucky in a game that they were very competitive in. So I do think that draws ownership his way once again, but I'm probably not on Noah Waterman, as I typically am not. Rain Smith at 4'8" is a playable value. I do like Rain Smith. He is reliant on his shooting ability, but he gets it done. So I do like that as a value piece. And then you have the freshman Connie Roofs, who out of necessity is playing about 15 minutes a game right now at 3'6". 20 fantasy points against Duke, but he has been awful against UTEP and Kentucky. That's to be expected, though, a younger, raw, undeveloped player like Connie Roots. Florida State, you always have to make that decision. Jameer Watkins, it's expensive at 8-9. Probably going to drop 35 here. It's fine. He's just 4X. It's a little more expensive than I think I'm willing to pay for Watkins, but he's definitely, the all everything. 38 minutes against Tulane, 40 against NC State. We get him up in that mark, it becomes painful to fade him, but if he hovers around the 30 to 31 mark like he typically does, not quite as exciting there. We got the absolute nuts out of Malik Ewan many times. Underpriced option, 5.2, 4.9. Those days are gone, and they are not coming back as he's priced at 7.7. Still has been fantastic. 10 of 15 from the field in their last game against Winthrop. 21 and 15. He is a rebounding machine. That is the second time in the past 4 games that he has put up 15-plus rebounds. Dude is absolute sicko, but you're going to have to pay 7.7 for him, which is tough. Taylor Balbolin, who was value early in the season, up there at 7K. He probably isn't going to see his price drop down in the 4K range ever again either. So it makes it tough, but I think one of the Watkins, Ewan, Balbolin group there likely ends up optimal or semi-optimal at worst. So you can make the decision there how you want to pan that one out. I do like Ewan the best, but I don't love that 7.7 price, that's for sure. But looking at it without Pryor and what their front court is, there's no reason to think that he won't dominate the glass once again. Do like the freshman Daquan Davis at 5'4". His minutes have been trending up. He played 33 against NC State. He played 35 against Tulane. Those were competitive games. Then against Winthrop, he played 27. Only shot 1 of 7, but he's out there and he's contributing in multiple categories. And he has a very sizable steal rate. So I do like Daquan Davis there at 5'4". Would like him to be cheaper, but DK did a pretty nice job, admittedly, on their tighter pricing for this slate. I do think he's a bit of a sneakier option. You have some value here in the likes of Justin Thomas, priced at 4.5, especially if he sees anywhere close to the 35 minutes like he saw against Tulane. Jerry Dang there at 4.5, the JUCO transfer, played 33 minutes against Tulane. He had foul trouble against Winthrop, so they barely used him there. He's gotten some recent spot starts, though. And if he were to start again, I do like him forward, 4.5 value. Boston Holt has been dealing with a foot issue, which has cost him a couple of games here. So if he remains out, I do think that continues to benefit Dang and to a lesser degree, Justin Thomas. All right, next game on tap here, Wake Forest versus Clemson. Man, Hunter Salas, what's up? Early in the year, we loved Hunter Salas. I loved Hunter Salas, which in turn, our community loved Hunter Salas because he was just, it's been so good and the focal point of the Wake Forest team. But he went through this stretch after the Detroit game where he just wasn't relevant. 23 against Florida, 13 against Minnesota, 30 against Texas A&M, 17 against BC. He had a huge game against James Madison, 27, 12, and 5 at 7-3 in his last game after kind of sleepwalking through most of December thus far. And he was pretty chalky at 35%. Good on those who rostered him, 12 for 20, 27, 12, and 5. Like, get out of here. He's not going to have 12 rebounds against Clemson. He's now priced at 8.7K, which is more like what he was priced at the beginning of the season. I like Hunter Salas a lot. I haven't written him off, but I just haven't been rostering him. So luckily, we still had a fine slate there without him the other day, but I wonder if people are going to, continue to plug him in. That is a pretty high price against a tougher opponent like Clemson, so we'll see. Cam Hildreth did not start last game, which was odd. He did still play 34 minutes off the bench, so I don't know if that was like a disciplinary thing. Didn't really look into that too in depth. He's priced at 7.9, would need to start before we really consider him. All of the main Wake Forest options are expensive. Trayvon Spiller's at 8.3 as well, but all of them playing 35 plus minutes. So you're paying a premium, but you're getting them on the floor for the majority of the time. Efton Reed is now in this price point, 6K for the last month of the season. You'd think that would be autoplay territory. But his foul issues continue to haunt him, and he's just, he's low in the pecking order. They're not setting up plays for him very often. He's having to get those putbacks or get those stocks, which he's done very well. Don't like his chances of staying on the floor against Clemson and their, a numerous amounts of players who can draw fouls. So I'm definitely leery of Efton Reed. We've seen Davin Cosby. He said this after the BC game when he played 4 minutes, like, hey, he starts, but we don't know if he's going to play 7 minutes. We don't know if he's going to play 13 minutes. We don't know if he's going to play 40 minutes. Played 30 against JMU, had a monster game. He's priced at 3.9. You might look at that and be like, well, shit, he starts. He played 30 minutes. That's an easy click, but not so fast. As a starter, 4 minutes against BC. And last Wake Forest slate, I went through this, so I'm just going to do it again. I'm going to do it every Wake Forest slate until it stops. 4 minutes as a starter against BC, negative 0.5. 33 minutes against Texas A&M as a starter, mind you, 30 fantasy points. 7 minutes against Minnesota as a starter, 1 fantasy point. So you just don't know. And there's a pattern going on here for those of you who like patterns. I do. I like them. So he should play 5 minutes as a starter here in this game against Clemson. It's not a good matchup for him by any means, but if he's out there for 30 plus minutes, I mean, he is an auto play at 3.9, but I can't tell you with any confidence that he will. That's a tough one to pay. I don't think even Wake Forest super fans or beat writers alike will know that one. Actually, there's one that follows me that I follow back that I'll ask. Maybe he does know. We'll find that out. Tyler Johnson, he's still rocking the crazy tights, his famous tights from Louisville. He's still playing 5 minutes one game, 20 the next. So another value that you just don't know. Juke Harris had been really good against BC, really good against Detroit, solid enough against Florida, and then just played 4 minutes against James Madison. So Coach Forbes trolling the shit out of us. I know he's not really, but it sure feels like it with these value plays. Cosby, Harris, and Tyler Johnson. Churchill Abbas, he looked pretty solid in short spurts last game, but he's never getting minutes. You can't really use him either. And then Parker Fredrickson, who got the start for Cam Hildreth in the last game, only played 15 minutes, which was basically what he always plays, whether he starts or not. So good luck there on the Wake Forest side. On the Clemson side, Ian Schifflin at 9.3K. Who would have thought, huh? 9.3. He had a very slow start to the South Carolina game, and in the second half, God tier mode enacted once again, 23 and 12, 40 fantasy points. Well worth the money if you can afford it at 9.3. I think he will do a solid job against Wake Forest. If you could find a prop to bet for him to get a double-double, I would be all over it. He's pretty much a lock for 15 and 10 as a floor in this game against Wake Forest. So if you can afford him, he's a premium spot, 9.3. It's not that expensive for what he's been doing. It's expensive if you just consider his name only, but he's been very good. Definitely there. Chase Hunter was spectacular against South Carolina in the second half. Again, slept walk through the first half. Second half, he was great. Overtime, he was great. 27 real points. Only 3 assists and a steal, but he put up 35. We can typically count on the peripheral stats from Chase Hunter, but he's been a scoring machine lately. Very much in play at 7-2. Victor Locken, he struggled. He fouled out in 15 minutes against South Carolina, so it was a rough game for him. That's caused his price to drop back down to 7-1, where I do like him for the same reasons as Schifflin. I think he has a double-digit rebounding game here against Wake Forest. Just has to stay on the floor. And you're getting a sizable discount from Schifflin at 9.3 to him at 7.1. So I think you probably want to play one of them, Schifflin or Locken. As far as the rest go, you have the value still in Dylan Hunter. You can count on him to play 20-plus minutes. I know it's not a sexy pick, but on a slate where we don't have the amazing value at our disposal that we can just lock in like we've had on the past week or so. It is a tighter price slate, which I like. But Hunter at 4.7, he doesn't need to give us a 30. If we get 18 to 20 out of him, we're ecstatic. If we get 12 to 15 out of him, I think we still feel good. And he's going to be on the floor. My team is on the floor. We do want to take note of Jake Heidbreder, though, because he played 26 minutes. And Heidbreder, he redshirted last year, after transferring from Air Force. And I want to pull up his Air Force days because it's probably been too long for most to remember how productive he was at Air Force for a couple of seasons. Sophomore year, 2 years ago at Air Force, 40% three-point shooter on volume, mind you, 188 attempts, 26.1% shot rate, 22% usage rate, the 8th most minutes in the Mountain West, so he's on the floor a lot. True shooting percentage over 63%, which was top 50 that year, and drew 3.5 fouls per 40, 87% free throw shooter, top 70 in the country. Really, really good. Again, sat out last year, but they are definitely ramping up his minutes, and I think it might be worth a shot. This is the kind of value play that has burned the industry in the past. Taking a guy who's priced at 3.5, like, hey, he's coming off a great game. He's trending up in minutes, but, he has a low floor, and we're not really sure. With Heidbreder, we are sure because if the minutes are there, I think he produces, and he's shown that ability during his time at Air Force. Now, it's taken him a little bit of time to get acclimated here with Clemson. They've got some new pieces. They've got guards in front of him, but I think Heidbreder is certainly a candidate for 20 minutes here against Wake Forest. Stylistically, he's a good fit against them, and I think that we see him, pay off this 3.5 price point more often than not. So I am on board with Heidbreder. There's risk for sure. I think Dylan Hunter is infinitely more safe, but he's also 1,200 more. And if the Heidbreder play gets you to an additional pay up beyond just one of Schiffelin or Cam Jones, Dylan Harper, and instead gets you to a second one where you're playing, I don't know, let's say Derek Queen and Dylan Harper, then I think you do it. I think that is enough firepower for you to take that chance on a player like Jake Heidbreder, who honestly is really good. All right, last game on the slate here, UCLA versus North Carolina. UGLA, you ain't got no alibi. All right, let's see here. Damn, there's a lot of games. I usually have these pulled up, but whatever. UCLA minus 1.5 point favorite. Total of 150.5. This is a spot, a DVP spot. Neutral court game. This is not in the old Tobacco Road. This is what they call the CBS Sports Classic. So an MTV of sorts. Just one game, though, at the Garden, Madison Square Garden here. The game of the day, perhaps, or game of the slate. UCLA, 9-game winning streak here. Mick Cronin, they did horrible last year. They went after the international prospects, which can be good, but they otherwise whiffed in the portal, didn't recruit all that well, and it showed. UCLA had an awful year, 16-17. This year, they're off to a 10-1 start. An early season neutral court loss to New Mexico. If UCLA played New Mexico tomorrow, tonight, today, now, they win that game 90% of the time. They have consecutive wins over Washington, Oregon, and Arizona. Then they beat the pants off Prairie View A&M. Now they've got this neutral court game against North Carolina. Ken Palm does have it 77-74. I would take the UCLA spread. DVP alert, in case you didn't know, North Carolina misses Armando Bacot. Who would have thought? A team that is so reliant on a dominant big man to get them through, someone the defense has to pay attention to, can't cheat over on RJ Davis or the perimeter. The lack of Bacot's presence, the fact that he had to graduate in the time of COVID and the time of the transfer portal, and now that JUCO's years don't count and you can play till you're 40, how did Armando Bacot not find another year of eligibility somewhere? Can he put on a Jalen Washington jersey for one game at least? North Carolina's front court is going to get absolutely curb stomped here. Now, this game, they're not going to get blown out. RJ Davis is going to score 40 if he has to. But they have no shot at stopping this UCLA front court. None. And I know that some of you in our community Discord, Ron, don't want to roster UCLA guys anymore. And after the fouling performance of Eric Daly against Arizona, I get it. God, 22 minutes. He just couldn't stop fouling. Awful, awful, right? Tyler Bilodeau, same thing against Arizona. He got into some foul trouble, but he ended up having a pretty solid game for his price. It was okay at 23. Now they followed that up with monster games against Prairie View A&M, but that's Prairie View A&M, so we don't have to get too excited here. But Bilodeau and Daly, clearly the best two options on UCLA. They're having great seasons. Throw out any foul busts, and you have a really strong play in Eric Daly at 6'5", and a really strong play in Tyler Bilodeau at 6'8". That is your pick. You take one of them. Again, we like forwards this season. We've run so many lineups with 4 and 5 forwards, more so this month and a half of the season than we have in, I think, a decade, honestly, of playing DFS. Forwards are the tits here this year in college basketball. Looking at the rates here, Bilodeau, a combined rebounding rate of nearly 32%. Eric Daly, combined rebounding rate of nearly 27%. Bilodeau has a 3.5% block rate. Daly shooting 43% from long range, so he's versatile in that regard. Neither of them are hulking players. Bilodeau 6'9", like 225. Daly 6'8", 230. But they are very good rebounders. They're the angle rebounders, right? Like you just know where the ball is going to bounce off. You take those angles. The Dennis Rodman path to rebounding. And when Daly being versatile as a three-point shooter and Bilodeau being so good on the block, and he's got post moves and he can step out and hit threes and do a little bit of everything. They're not the typical dominant postman that we've seen terrorize North Carolina, but still, as a purveyor of DVP and a true believer in DVP, I value it and place a priority very high on DVP. You guys know that. I'm going to continue to use those 4s and 5s against North Carolina until further notice, until Jalen Washington either starts playing like Armando Bacot or Armando Bacot puts on a Jalen Washington jersey and starts stopping opposing front courts. So, yes, I will be playing one of Eric Daly, Tyler Bilodeau, and I think you should too. Nice thing about Daly is guard forward eligible. So if you want to jam another forward, not just 5, but 6 forwards into your lineup, you can do it. So one of those two. Sebastian Mack's cheap at 5'1". I like Sebastian Mack typically. Did have a minor issue in the Prairie View A&M game, but I don't think it's anything that's going to keep him out, so you don't have to be worried about those minutes. I do love Sky Clark at 4-3 as a value. Came through against Arizona, 32 minutes, 15, 3, and 1 for 22 fantasy points. Now, he's had some pretty rough games, and he's far from a guarantee at 4-3 to actually come through, but he is playing a lot more minutes over the last, say, 4 to 5 games of the season, and he is kind of starting to separate from the Dom Harris, the Trent Perrys, the Lazar Stefanoviches of the world. As a starter, we can expect him to start pushing even closer to 30 minutes. Once we start getting closer to true conference play, we do see rotations start to tighten up. And I think that in addition to Kobe Johnson, Eric Daly, Tyler Bilodeau playing a lot of minutes, I think Sky Clark's going to be in that group as well. And we're going to see those guys along with Dylan Andrews, Kobe Johnson playing high minutes. Adi Mara, Trent Perry, and Lazar Stefanovic as those bench pieces. Sebastian Mack, we'll see where he fits into the equation. But yes, Sky Clark is definitely a value piece that I am using or would use in my main lineup. Am I going to play multiple UCLA? I don't know. Maybe not. We'll see. But 4.3K playing 28 to 30 minutes against North Carolina. Yes, please. Speaking of which, on the North Carolina side, RJ Davis, I felt like this the entire season. Under 10K, he's just such a great play. And you saw against Florida, a tough Florida team. He tried to will them back into the game. Florida, the score was 90 to 84, and they technically had a chance, but it didn't seem like Florida ever really lost control of that game. RJ Davis just went into what Bill Simmons used to call FU mode and could not be stopped scoring-wise. I do like RJ Davis. The perimeter defense of UCLA is harassing. There's no reason to respect the front court, so they're just going to continue to throw multiple bodies at RJ Davis. It's going to make it difficult for him. He shot 3 for 11 from long range against Florida, 10 of 19 overall, which you'll take, 52%, but the threes, they're making him work. He's had some really rough outings shooting the basketball, 1 of 11 from long range against Bama, 2 of 8 against Georgia Tech, 2 of 6 against LaSalle. He just continues to struggle, but the volume is there. Elliott Kadu is too expensive, at least I believe so, at 7.5. Turnovers have been an issue for Elliott Kadu. I will say that. Seth Trimble's there at 7.4. He's been a revelation. He had a great exhibition, great, over the summer, and that's catapulted him into the season where he's been a very consistent option. And we've been able to use him with confidence all season long. 7.4 is a little spendy, but he is safe. Value-wise, we've had some decent looks. Games from Drake Powell. He's fallen back down in recent games, but he's looked pretty solid, especially when they've needed some shots. He's been able to come through. Ian Jackson has looked the part as a highly rated recruit coming into the season. There are growing pains to be had, but he's starting to come into his own. We have seen Van Allen Lubin play 20-plus minutes in back-to-back games at 4.7K. He's a usable option. They got to stop the post. Clearly, Jalen Withers and Jalen Washington are not the guys for the job to stop the post. You bring in Van Allen Lubin, who's had success at different intervals at Notre Dame and Vandy. You got to play him more. Washington's now playing around 15 minutes. It's what they're going to get out of him. Withers is hovering around 10 to 12 minutes. You got to have somebody in the front court play a lot. And Van Allen Lubin, I think, is going to be that guy. I wonder why they don't play Ty Cloud more. We saw Cloud at Georgia Tech put up some big games, but they were mostly offensive games. Maybe stylistically he doesn't fit into what they're trying to do on defense, but it is kind of peculiar he's not playing more. He would be super intriguing at 3-1 if he suddenly jumped in the starting lineup. I know he's talented. We know he can put up points as a DFS asset, and he's only 3.1K, but not playable right now. And then Cade Tyson, who had a really good game against LaSalle. We all had a good chuckle about it. We hoped people around the industry would roster him after. They didn't. They were too smart for that. He had another horrible game against Florida. He's not that guy. So on the North Carolina side, not that keen on using anyone but Van Allen Lubin at 4.7, just because they got to have somebody in the front court. And he's a guy capable of handling 20 to 25 minutes. There's just no other way around that. And at least one ability or daily on the UCLA side, possibly more. Possibly Sky Clark as well. All right, that wraps up the 11-game slate. Went a little bit longer than I wanted to, but when you get me going, that's just how it is. I wanted to get a chance to talk about the night slate, but there's just no way. There's no way we're going to be able to do that. So we'll save that for the Discord, for the community, for the people. All right, let's talk core. Core-wise here, this is a tough one. There's a lot of good options here. Number one, I'm going to cheat a little bit here and say Eric Daly or Tyler Bilodeau. So dealer's choice there, but one of those guys you're going to want to roster. You want to ask which one I'm going to use. I am leaning Daly, but it just depends. If I have that extra 300, I might go Bilodeau because I think Bilodeau has more upside, but I really like what Daly offers. Core play number 2. This is a tough one. You'd think I'd come into it and just rattle them off, but I'm still formulating a plan here. Posh play. The Posh play, what's up with the Posh play? We were 3-4, and then we relied on some guys who let us down. So we're 3-5 with the Posh plays actually working out. But Matt Cross as a Posh play did come through. I think that 7.3 price really scares people away. So core play number 2 is going to be Matt Cross, and we will designate him as the Posh play. Love him against BC. I expect him to continue to just ball out. I really like the way that Matt Cross plays. I have for multiple years. Now he's in a program and a system under Enfield that is really showcasing what he can do. Love Matt Cross. So Matt Cross being core play number 2. It's tough. The third core play, if Samson Johnson is out, has to be Terrace Reed. I'm giving you a bunch of forwards here. Told you it's the year of the forwards. If Samson Johnson plays, then core play number 3 changes a bit there. and we move over to a Kaman Malawak or Malik Brown from Duke, one of those two, which gives us some serious salary savings. Other players I'm going to be extremely high on, Xavier Lee from Princeton. Love Xavier Lee. You guys know that. Talked heavily. Dante Maddox from Xavier. Feels like a chase, but I do believe in him. Jake Heidbreder, one of Victor Locken, Ian Schiffelin, Malik Ewan, if I can get there. And then one of these Mississippi State guys who all feel like they're priced correctly. But God, I love Josh Hubbard. I love Michael Nwoko. Claudio Harris at 5'1" potentially. So that's kind of where my head's at for the rest of it. But the official core we'll give you right now, Eric Daly and or Tyler Bilodeau. Pick one of them. Terrace Reed and Matt Cross. Nice thing about Daly is you can put him as a guard. Let's run 6 forwards. Let's do it and be successful. All right, let's get some best bets in here, and then we'll get out. Love Mercer. I don't like this Mercer team a lot. They're plus 8.5 against Winthrop. That is bet number 1. I like Mercer to cover at plus 8.5 and a sprinkle of the money line for good measure. High Point versus Southern Illinois. The High Point boys. We're big on High Point around the FTN Woods. Mike Randall is too. Love High Point. They're going to win a game in March in the tournament. Mark my words. Minus 2.5 against Southern Illinois. I'll take that all day. Money line at minus 166. Yes, please. Let's see here. Florida State outright plus 102. They're going to beat Villanova. Or they're going to beat Louisville. I mean, that's just the facts. That's just the reality. Niagara plus 16 against St. Bonaventure. St. Bonaventure is going to have some issues there covering that. They're a good team, don't get me wrong, but they do have some potential issues in the perimeter with some injuries. Desante Bowen, who transferred in from Iowa and has been a pretty big piece for them, did miss the Providence and Siena game. Sounds like he's going to be out once again. Looking at that game, Ken Palm has it 76-57 in favor of St. Bonaventure. I don't believe it. I don't buy it. He's what CBS would call a computer tricker here with St. Bonaventure, who's 11-1. They've been very good. Niagara, 5-6, not great, but they're coached by Greg Paulus, and I think that they keep this one competitive. So that's one that I like at plus 16. Mississippi State outright, but also +1 versus Memphis. They're going to win that game. Very confident in Mississippi State. Virginia Tech plus 4.5. I don't like Virginia Tech very much this year, but St. Joe's just, they don't beat anyone. They don't cover against anyone, and they don't beat anyone. So plus 4.5 for Virginia Tech there. Princeton plus 6. Love that one. I think we're talking about a 1-possession game to the end here. So give me Princeton plus 6. SMU outright, and then over 154.5 between Marquette and Xavier. All right, and let's see if we got any decent price picks up, and then we'll head out. It's making me do the press and hold to confirm you're not a robot thing real quick, so apologies here while I do that. And hence, dropping all kinds of pop culture references here. I hope you guys are knowing what I'm putting down here. Picking up what I'm putting down, I should say. I like how it says press and hold to confirm you are a human, but also not a bot. What if you're not a human and not a bot? Then what? Oh, Jesus, come on. Well, we might not be checking out Prize Picks after all here. Apparently, I am a bot, and not the kind that plays Fortnite. Okay, underdog it is. Which prop bets have been extremely extremely favorable to us on underdog lately. My internet is either not working. Okay, here we go. All right, Bay and Dangu under 7.5 rebounds plus assists versus Duke. I just think he's going to be fouling. An under 16.5 points plus rebounds for that matter. Just don't trust him not to get into foul trouble, to be honest. Indiana's playing Chattanooga. What kind of rebounding number do you want to give us on Omar Ballo here? 10.5 rebounds. It's also 13.5 points. I like that over 10.5 rebounds for Omar Ballo against Chattanooga. Give me that all day long. Pierre Brooks under 15.5 points versus Connecticut. I think this is a game where he's going to struggle to find his shot. Matt Cross, my man, Matty Cross. It's a PRA number of 20.5. Give me that over 20.5 points, rebounds, and assists for Matty Cross. He's hitting that number by halftime. No, total game. I love it. That's my guy. Damn. Dairy Queen's numbers are high. Oh, here we are. Cam Matthews, who has been sensational on the glass and his peripherals overall. It's a 10.5 rebounds plus assists number. So I am going to over 10.5 rebounds and assists for him. Points, they're harder to come by, so I don't want any part of his PRA, but I am confident that he has 8 or 9 rebounds. So we just need a couple of assists there to complete that. So I'm big on that one. Josh Hubbard over 17.5 real points. I think he has a big 20-point game. Hunter Salas under 16.5 points against Clemson. Coming back down to earth. Hunter, I'm sorry. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news there for you. Over 8.5 rebounds for Malik Ewan. He's going to have another double-digit game. He's going to keep his double-digit rebound streak going here at 5 games. And then one last one here. Daly. Over 15.5 points plus rebounds for Eric Daly. DVP special there. It's 21.5 for Billadou, which I still kind of like there, but I'll take the 15.5 for Eric Daly, which is a more attainable number. And I do like Eric Daly to not foul and to have a big game there for us in the DVP spot of the main slate. All right, so that is the conclusion of our journey tonight. I appreciate all of you watching live here. You have been fantastic. Big day, as I said, 3-game CFB slate, which we'll have a ton of content for, already up on the slate, or already up on the site. That bowl and playoff breakdown, which is free content. Gotta love it. 11-game slate projections and slate notes. There will also be projections for the 8-game slate. We're dialing in here 0.92 R2. Love it. At WDeuce85 on all socials. You are going to be seeing a lot more short form content out of myself here at FTN beyond just the Heisman stuff that we did, which you guys seem to enjoy. I appreciate that. And then next week, we will be on Monday night and Friday night for college basketball. The usual time of Thursday night for the CFB breakdown. There is a ton of games, huge slates, 5+ games Friday and Saturday. Jake Kuchek and I will cover them all for you next Thursday, 9 p.m. PST, 10 p.m. PST on Monday and Friday to break down the college basketball slates. Appreciate your guys' continued support. On the way out, please help me out. Make sure you drop a like if you haven't already. All of those interactions are extremely helpful. Good luck tomorrow. Green screens and window trips. T-shirt. Got to get it one. Take care, guys.